time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
On a Monday, and great to have you with us. Thank you, Chad Erickson. Lot to do over the next 60 minutes. Busy weekend in sports. Look, it's football season. We will be joined in this program by Bruce Beck, NBC4 New York, their fantastic sports director. City's on fire. Yankees, Mets, WNBA, Nick season getting ready to get started. It's great. Hockey, of course, with the Rangers. Bruce Beck will join us to talk about the baseball side of that coming up in about 10 minutes. Bill Bender joins us in 20 minutes. We'll get some thoughts with him. Does a terrific job on college football, all things football for the sporting news. Something to consider on the Eagles today, odds and ends, and a whole bunch more. But we first say hello to our friend Sam Yarnell, who is here, as he is each and every day on the program. What we learned from week 6 in the NFL, Sam?
Ooh, the Dallas Cowboys, Jason Page, are really, really bad. It's so funny when we were obviously this game involved in both of our. Actually, you may not have picked this game. It was involved in my Page versus the Prince. And
no, I picked it.
When I was capping the game on the show, I said, I come on the show and say this all the time. And I think this game was like the ultimate proof of that. The Dallas Cowboys, we talk about athletes sometimes being Jags, just another guy. The Dallas Cowboys are a Jat. They're just another team. They're not going to be anything other than that this season. And this was an embarrassing one for them, man. At home against the Lions, you get boat race to the point the Lions are doing hook and ladders to offensive tackles, up 30 with 5 minutes to go in the third. This was embarrassing for Dallas. If I'm a Cowboys, Yankees, Ohio State fan, really rough weekend for that whole fan base.
It was the worst loss since the Troy Aikman days, before the Troy Aikman days. This is how bad this was. But even with all that said, Sam, they're a game out of first place. They're a game out of first place. There's still time. I was interviewed this morning on a radio station in Connecticut. I said, the good news is there's still plenty of season left for the Cowboys. The bad news is there's still plenty of season left for the Cowboys. That's the reality of their situation right now. But I want to talk about the Lions for a minute. And I said this when we picked this game on Friday. And I did have the over in the game. And by the way, first perfect week for Page versus the Prince goes to this guy. 4-0. Hope you tailed me. You made some money if you did. That's for sure. So to me, the story is the Lions. Because I said this last Friday on the show when we were talking about games to watch. They're flying under the radar. And I think that'll change after this performance in Dallas. They had been flying under the radar. They're 5-1, have been a very impressive 5-1, and they're looking like a team right now that, again, we're talking about 4 contenders. And I as much as I know you love C.J. Stroud in Houston, I don't even know if I put them yet in that category. I'm still not sold on them as a Super Bowl contender. But I could say the Lions are definitively right now a Super Bowl contender with what they were able to do. That all being said, the loss of Aidan Hutchinson, that was tough to see. Broke his tibia. As somebody who has suffered an open compound fracture of his tibia, that is a catastrophic injury. They were going to have surgery last night in Dallas. It did not look good. Best wishes for him, because forget the idea of when he comes back to play. I think the question with that kind of injury is, do you come back to play at all? And it depends how clean a break it is, and if there's infection, and if there's other areas of that part of the leg, which they won't find out until they went in there. We'll obviously have to wait and see. But man, oh man, I felt for Aidan Hutchinson yesterday. And look, we're talking about sports, and that's what we get paid to do, is talk about sports. And from a sports perspective, it is a huge injury for the Lions to lose this guy. He is irreplaceable at that position. And it could play a big role in what this team does as we go through the rest of the season, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, to your point there at the end, it's like Max Crosby, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Aidan Hutchinson. Those are like the four big edge rushers, I think, in my mind, in the NFL right now. Having a pillar of that taken away from your team is really tough if you're the Detroit Lions. Having a pillar of that taken away from your team when you're doing as well as you are and still a game out of first place in the division is really, really hard. I agree with you with in terms of the Lions flew under the radar until now. And, I said that when I gave the Mountain Page versus the Prince, it was a great look. Here's the thing. Now they're going to very quickly go from being under the radar to the opposite of that, over the radar, overexposed, because now they've got this huge win under their belt against a team that gets a ton of media coverage compared to how good they actually are. But regardless, they got this big win under their belt. And now everyone's going to be like, all right, the Lions can beat anyone, not realizing they might be missing their best, second best, or at worst, third best defensive player. It's going to be a very interesting dynamic to me kind of around the Lions and how we, especially as a handicapper, how we'll deal with kind of navigating them through the rest of the season. That said, I don't think that as big as this injury is, it takes them completely out of contention for the NFC. They have played well enough, and especially the way we've seen that offense move the ball at certain points over this year and last year, they've played well enough to show that they can overcome an injury like this.
They were 10-1 to win the Super Bowl when we were on the air last Friday. They're now plus 950, so basically 9.5 to 1. So the odds haven't moved all that much. And I wonder if that's a balancing act of, well, yes, they throttled the Dallas Cowboys. It's also the Dallas Cowboys, and they just lost arguably their best defensive player in Aidan Hutchinson. So I am sure there is a balancing act there as far as the odds makers are concerned. Chiefs at 5-1, 49ers plus 650, the Ravens plus 750, and the Lions at 950, and then the Texans at 10-1. Tomorrow on the show, we will have all your Tuesday leftovers, all the NFL you can possibly stomach on tomorrow's program. But as we continue with this Monday edition of the show, we've got to do some baseball. Bruce Beck, NBC4 in New York, does a terrific job on everything New York sports. We'll get his thoughts on the Yankees. We'll get his thoughts on the Mets. Maybe we'll slip in a question on the Giants, who lost to the Bengals in Sunday Night Football, dropped to 2-4. We'll see. Lots more to do on this Monday edition of Sports Wrap. Don't go anywhere. All right, let's shift gears from the NFL to Major League Baseball. New York is on fire right now between the Yankees and Mets. Even got the WNBA Finals going on right now at the Liberty. Knicks getting ready to get started with Karl Anthony Towns. Who better to bring in than the great Bruce Beck, NBC4 New York sports director, hanging out with us on the program. Look, I've been in that town when the Yankees and Mets are both this good and you've got something special going on. There's 4 teams left in the Major League Baseball season. The Yankees and the Mets are 2 of them. Try and give me a description from a sports fan standpoint what it's like there right now.
Well, today we got Devils against the Utah hockey team at 1. We've got Mets-Dodgers NLCS Game 2 at 4:08. We've got Rangers against the Red Wings at 7. We've got Yanks-Guardians ALCS opener at 7:38. We got Jets-Bills at 8:15, and we've got Islanders-Avalanche at 9. It's crazy. It's hard to know what to do first. You just take the game that's in front of you. You try to focus on the playoff games first. Yesterday, we had the New York Liberty evening up the series in the WNBA Finals. So, Jason, it's an unparalleled time after many years where the cupboard was bare.
They can
so
give you.
It's kind of exciting again to see New York sports, bridging news and being a part of the newscast, being a part of everyone's lives the way it is.
Bruce, they can give you the whole 30 minutes at 11 o'clock. and I don't know if even that would be enough time. In terms of the Mets, This is obviously a surprise, despite the fact they have one of the highest payrolls in baseball. So calling them like the feel-good story is kind of a weird thing when you consider they have one of the highest payrolls in baseball. Yes, some of that is paying for guys that aren't even on the roster anymore. But try and give me a sense for just how surprising this Mets run has been and how much the fans have really embraced this team.
I think that's the the whole point here. It's the unexpected. It's the magic. It's grimace. It's, oh my God. This team was 11 games under 500. They were 24-35. They've been the best team in baseball for the final 100 games of the year. Yes, they have a high payroll, but this was a reset year. And next year they were supposed to go for it. Maybe go after Juan Soto, get some quality pitching. But they've done it with an unbelievable chemistry. Carlos Mendoza, the manager, has done a brilliant job, and they like each other. And they caught, lightning in a bottle down the stretch, and they just believe that they can win every game. Now, last night's loss to the Dodgers, 9-0, could have set them back a little. Might be a reality check. Dodgers are really good and have their mojo back. But the Mets are playing with house money anyway, Jason.
How much has the narrative changed with regard to Pete Alonso, where it seemed like, it was a foregone conclusion he probably wasn't going to be back with the team, given the fact that they weren't able to come to terms on anything that made sense for both sides. How much has that narrative changed?
I think it's changed. I think him hitting the big home run that saved the season may have changed it a little bit. He's hit some other homers in the postseason. I still think that they will look at their payroll. And again, I think a lot depends on if they get Juan Soto, what they do with everyone else. But this team is fun, and this team is tight, and this team is chemistry. Do you want to break it up? Or do you say to yourself, it's impossible to repeat this little magical run? I don't know what's going to happen with Pete. I know that he feels the pressure. I know he knows what's going on. But this could change depending on how far they go. It really could.
Give me a sense on the Yankees, obviously, getting through. And it's kind of interesting. I compare the Yankees and Dodgers in this way. Shohei Ohtani did almost nothing in that National League Divisional Series. And you started to see him waking up, and Mookie Betts is starting to wake up. The Yankees made it through the ALDS with getting virtually nothing from Aaron Judge, sans some walks and a couple of hits in the series. He really struggled as his postseason narrative, by and large, has been an issue. If the Yankees get Aaron Judge production in the American League Championship Series, it feels an awful lot like that Dodgers-Mets series could feel, where the Yankees win this series fairly easily.
I think that Aaron Judge has to hit for the Yankees to win the World Series. Do I think they could get by this one, even if he doesn't hit? If that happens, Jazz Chisholm, who was 2 for 15, Alex Verdugo, who was 3 for 14, Austin Wells, who was 2 for 16, those guys have to hit, because Giancarlo Stanton was really the only guy along with Gleyber Torres, and Gleyber didn't even hit that well in that series, but he's been hitting productively down the stretch. Those guys hit, and I believe the postseason's about hitting. The Yankees have lost to the Astros in the past because they can't hit. The Yankees lost to the Tigers going way back when Joe Torre moved Alex Rodriguez to the 7th spot because they couldn't hit. So I've seen the postseason, and to me, what the Dodgers are doing is unbelievable. 33 straight innings without giving up a run. But yes, the Yankees have to hit in this postseason, and Judge has to hit for them to win it all. And I think he has to hit a little bit, at least, for them to win the ALCS.
And Bruce, I'll throw this one out there. That town was ready to run Gleyber Torres out. I mean, everybody wanted to get rid of Gleyber Torres, and I could have made the argument myself one way or another. And he has been huge so far in this postseason for them, and really since they moved him up to the leadoff spot.
Right, and down the stretch, he was an excellent player. He's a clutch postseason player. If you look at his numbers, Stanton's a clutch postseason player. This is something that Judge needs to do at some point, and he knows it. He doesn't like when we're discussing it, but when you become a legend in New York, it happens because of the postseason. The one thing that I'm worried about if I'm a Yankee fan is Emmanuel Clase, Hunter Gaddis, Cade Smith, Tim Herron, all ERAs under 2, bullpen regular season, and there's a big case study there, all 75 games or more. This is an awesome bullpen. If the Guardians have the lead it's going to be difficult for the Yankees. That it behooves them to get out in front in these ball games.
I only got about 45 seconds, but I got to ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how shocked were you when you woke up last week and Robert Saleh was out of a job and being escorted out of the building?
I wasn't totally shocked. I was surprised that it happened on that particular day. But Woody Johnson's impulsive, and he got Aaron Rodgers for a reason, and he's only got a life in the NFL of a year or two, and he had to take a shot here and do something to jumpstart this team. It starts tonight against the Bills. If they win, they're tied for first place in the division, and all of a sudden you've got 11 games left after that, and they have a season. So the Jets needed to do something. Too many penalties, too many mistakes, not accountable. I think they had to do something.
Bruce Beck, NBC4 New York. He does a terrific job there on all things sports. I know you're incredibly busy. Thank you for giving me a few minutes as always, and we'll talk to you soon.
Jason, always a pleasure to join you.
We got a lot more to do on this Monday edition of Sports Wrap. Bill Bender from the Sporting News talking college football and a whole bunch more. Don't go anywhere. Sports Wrap continues on this Monday, and if it is a Monday, it can only mean one thing. Bill Bender is here. Way too dressed for this show. Look at him, he's clean shaven.
I even showered for you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Look like you're going to church.
Yeah.
My goodness. Alabama fans are probably looking for religion right now because, boy, oh boy. I mean, how do you explain? I mean, at halftime of the Georgia game, we're talking about Jalen Milrose as the Heisman favorite. Boy, that seems like a long time ago, doesn't it?
Well, 2 weeks ago. So, into the first half, blown coverage on a fourth down, Nick Saban would have broken a headset. Interception, another headset. They allow South Carolina to score again, and it's one of the most interesting first half meltdowns I've ever seen. That went from 14-0 to a dogfight, and then they had a meltdown in the second half with the onside kick and South Carolina scoring and nearly tying the game. I told my son, I literally told Grant, I think Nick Saban would have broken 8 headsets during this game. And it's just a reminder that he's not there anymore heading into this matchup against Tennessee. Tennessee can't score, and Alabama can't stop people. So what do we do with this game, Jason? I have no idea.
Maybe Sam has a recommendation of what we do with this game.
You mentioned that. So the Alabama thing is so interesting to me, Bill, right? Because we're talking so much about the gameplay and, Saban. None of this would have happened under Saban. The Malachi Moore thing happens last week. I don't think any of that would have happened under Saban. Do you feel differently? Do you think there's any way he would have played in the game under Nick Saban?
Right. No. And they probably would have had a suspension. There would have been no drama throughout the week, but Nick Saban wouldn't have cared. He would have sat him anyway. And I think here are the games that matter for Kalen DeBoer, and this is one of them. And when they go to LSU and when they go to Oklahoma, Nick Saban was so good against Tennessee, LSU. Actually lost a few in the Iron Bowl, but I think Alabama should be okay. But this is one of those games. Nick Saban lost one time to Tennessee. One time. 2 years ago in a wild game that Alabama probably should have won if they would have managed the clock late in the game. So I know Texas, Georgia is a blockbuster. I get that. I'm a little more interested in this game because these teams are flawed and they both have one loss, and the losing team is going to, I don't know what they're going to do on Sunday morning, but it's going to be entertaining to read.
Give me a thought on, let's stay in the SEC. Is time running out on Lane Kiffin right now?
They are undisciplined. And I know that's a loose term that gets used a little too loosely, but way too many penalties. You can't go to Death Valley at night, have 110 yards in penalties and expect to win. I know LSU had a little bit of a miracle touchdown pass there at the end. Not really a miracle. The guy was wide open, and then they win in overtime. But I don't know. I think as we get into this next month, if Ole Miss doesn't beat Georgia, you're going to hear Florida rumors pick up because Billy Napier, they are playing better, but they haven't got to November yet. And we all know what Florida's November looks like. So I think it will be interesting to see what the Lane Kiffin Florida rumor mill turns out. And there has to be some disappointment, Jason. This team was hyped. And this was the most hyped Ole Miss team of my lifetime coming into the regular season. And now they have 2 disappointing losses.
What do you think of LSU? You know, remember after that first loss of the year, I think it was like the very first college football game of the year, Brian Kelly went nuts. And now I think we kind of know why. He saw the potential in this team.
Yeah, people, I can separate Brian Kelly on social media and what people say versus Brian Kelly, football coach, and what I see. And they don't lose at home. They don't lose at night. He's a great football coach. He really is. He might not be great. He's cringy. There's no doubt. And he has those moments that are, whether they're scripted or not, but we can't deny the track record. And what he has right now is a leader in touchdown passes in the SEC and Garrett Nussmeier, a defense that's a little more talented than we thought. It's not great, but it's good enough. And all of a sudden, they're in the top 10 in the college football playoff picture, and their tough ones are at home. They get Alabama at home. They get, Oklahoma at home, I believe. So their tough games are at home. They got through one of them, and I mean, they kind of control their destiny in the SEC race. That loss to USC seems like years ago.
Bill, the best team in the SEC is the best team in college football, Texas. And over the weekend at the Texas State Fair, they put the belt to Oklahoma. What did you take away from this game? And is anyone going to challenge the Longhorns this year?
They'll get challenged on Saturday, but I still like them to win the game outright. I just think they're complete. They pulled up against Oklahoma, believe it or not. You know, they didn't really take a lot of chances with Quinn Ewers in the passing game. The running game was working. I think what's undervalued with Texas is their running game's really relentless and their defense is good. They get after the passer. They stop the run. They create turnovers. And for all the quarterback drama with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning, I mean, we answered that question. It's Quinn Ewers' team. He's going to be that guy. Georgia will come in there and test them, though. And I think this is the other game I've been going back and forth on because we've handed Kirby Smart an underdog card. And he doesn't get to use that one much, and he uses the underdog card when he's a 30-point favorite. What do you think he's going to do when he's an actual underdog?
Texas is 4-1 right now to win it all. Georgia at plus 450, Ohio State at 450, Oregon at 550, and then there's a huge drop-off to Alabama after that. So it feels like college football, you know, we're starting to find that separation, Bill, when you talk about Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, and Oregon.
Yeah, and I would say Alabama's on that fringe. If Alabama goes into Neyland and beats them by 2 touchdowns, we'll put them right back in there. But those 4 teams have separated a little bit, even though Georgia lost to Alabama, and they could get a second loss. I thought what I've learned in these top 5 games, Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State, what did they share? High scoring. Doesn't matter how good their defenses are, they can score. Oregon could score on Ohio State. They didn't care. Dylan Gabriel had a fantastic game. I think the Buckeyes, the questions that I'm hearing here in Columbus on Monday are they let one get away, whereas I kind of looked at that game, Jason, and thought Ducks should have won that game by 10 points.
Yeah, and I want to talk to you about that game. We'll hold that over going into the other segment. Talking with Bill Bender, getting some thoughts with him around college football. As I said, we're starting to get to that point in the season where you're starting to find some separation. Oregon continues to shine. We obviously saw what Dylan Gabriel was able to do this weekend. We'll get to that coming up in a couple of minutes. Also still to come in the program, something to consider. We'll be talking some NFL and something to consider. Nick Sirianni. Yikes. There's also some breaking news in the NFL regarding Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa that we will get to. Don't go anywhere. Lots more sports wrap on a Monday. We keep things moving on this Monday edition of the show. Something to consider in 10 minutes. Talking some college football. Our guy Bill Bender is here from the Sporting News. Does a terrific job on all things football there. See Baker Mayfield, by the way? For people who didn't see it, that Texas-Oklahoma game, they planted the flag, I guess, in his jersey. And he was asked about it after the Buccaneers win yesterday. He was like, yep, had a couple of great wins there, and it's great to be living rent-free in their head. I love it.
a decade later. He said a decade later, which was hilarious.
Oh, he's great. I miss him in college football. I miss that. I know, remember, they had the immaturity issues with him there and then again at Cleveland. And look at him. He's gotten older, playing great football. And most importantly, he still cares about that Texas-Oklahoma rivalry. And he's right, by the way. If they're still talking about Baker Mayfield from 2015, he's definitely correct.
Yeah, he absolutely is. What did you make of the Ohio State-Oregon matchup? We briefly touched on it. I think I asked you last week about Oregon. Look, Sam's losing his mind over there. We obviously saw what Oregon was able to do in that game, and Dylan Gabriel's Heisman hopes obviously are right there. You look at second best odds to win the Heisman. What was your biggest takeaway from Oregon and Ohio State, Bill?
Well, the Buckeyes defense is human. Oregon had 8 plays of 20 yards or more. Dylan Gabriel balled out, and I had doubts about that. I think I was on here saying, he had these red zone interceptions against Michigan State. Yeah. He was on point all night and made that, running touchdown, everything. Oregon was without some guys, without Jordan Burch. So a little bit of a shell shock for Ohio State. The other takeaway, and Ryan Day is getting criticized as usual when they lose a big game, 2-6 against top 5 teams, but they just mismanaged the end of the game. I don't want to hear about Jeremiah Smith's offensive pass interference. That's what he did. I don't want to hear about 12 defenders and Oregon's gaming the system. Who cares? They let a lot of time run off. They should have had a good question I saw on Twitter of all places. What distance is he okay with his field goal kicker trying to win the game? Because they had it. All you had to do was run the football, kick a 40-yarder, and get out of there.
It's a good point, Bill. And I hadn't thought about that in terms of it really was only a 40-yarder. I mean, obviously, Will Howard, that's a play that's going to live in his memory for the rest of time. There's another great game in the Big Ten, though. I don't think any of us expected it to be that good of a game between Penn State and USC, the USC team that's kind of floundered ever since that week 1 win against LSU. Is there any better tight end in college football right now than Tyler Warren, Bill? And do we worry about this Penn State team now being this shaky against a USC team that's been struggling lately?
Throughout what might be considered a dated comparison, Tyler Warren reminds me of Mark Bavaro, old Giants tight end from the 80s. He was a stud on the Super Bowl teams. You can throw it to him every time. He's reliable. He's hard to bring down. Had this record game. I give credit to James Franklin for that. They were down 2 touchdowns. It would have been so easy to pile on him and pile on Penn State and keep feeding into this, Big Ten teams can't travel to the West Coast theory, which holds up, by the way. And instead, they turned it around. And Drew Aller shook off the mistakes. They went out there and got a big win. I think they're in position to be undefeated when Ohio State comes there on November 2nd, and that's the one he needs because they haven't beat Ohio State since 2016. And after watching those games Saturday, you start to believe I never think they can beat Ohio State. Now it's at least in my head.
You know what's remarkable? And I think we all knew this was going to happen when they expanded the playoffs. When you had 4 teams, it was, oh my God, the 5th and 6th team got screwed. And you know it's coming. It's going to be the 13th and 14th and 15th teams. They got screwed. I mean, that's what's going to happen because you're going to wind up with, serious debates near the bottom of this, playoff list. When we get to, another month or 2 from now, you're going to have some serious debates. And we're going to be going through the same thing we go through every year with this.
Oh, I agree. We're already there. We're already looking like, for example, we do that playoff projection like everybody else does. I sit there and type it up on Saturday night. And I was even doing it in my head on Saturday. I was like, is Tennessee really out? Should they be out? And then we put them out. And I'm thinking, well, Tennessee fans will be mad. But then the back half of me is like, well, how mad can you be? You just lost to Arkansas. You were really close to losing to Florida. And if you lose to Alabama, yes, you would be out. And the Big 12 right now has 2 teams in that nobody likes, Iowa State and BYU. And all they do is continue to cover, continue to win at home, and continue to win with their defense and turnovers. So I got news for everybody. The Cyclones and Cougars, you might not like them, but they're not going away.
Is there a dark horse you see when it comes to the Heisman right now? I mean, we got, the kid from Boise State. You got, Dylan Gabriel. I mean, is there somebody you could see still with time to make a rise here?
Well, Gabriel, definitely. Carson Beck, even on some level. I know he had that bad first half against Alabama, but
12-1.
Yeah, and if he has a big game against Texas, they'll vault him right back in. And if they win the SEC, whoever wins the SEC, their quarterback will have a chance. I'll put it to you that way. But I will say this, Ashton Genty is incredible. The fact that we're putting him in he could break Barry Sanders' record. Barry Sanders' rushing record to me is very similar to Pete Rose's record or, the touchdown pass record. It's a holy grail college football record. If he takes a run at it, he'll have a chance.
Bill, in 10 seconds, Travis Hunter, a chance to win the Heisman?
Going to be a lot tougher now that he's injured and now that they have a second loss. But he still has a chance as long as he keeps playing.
I got to wonder if there comes a certain point in the year, given his personality, if he just says, you know what, I'm not playing anymore. I'm saving myself for the NFL.
You're on to something. I'll leave it at that.
That's a good way to leave it. That's Bill Bender. Does a great job with the sporting news on all things college football. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Odds and Ends wraps things up in 10 minutes, including some predictions on Monday Night Football. Gee, I wonder what Sam's going to think of the Bills and Jets matchup. We'll talk about that WNBA as well. Finals, already 2 games done, tied at 1 game apiece. But first, Sam Yarnell, something to consider. Consider this. Nick Sirianni is clearly feeling the heat in Philadelphia when it comes to this Eagles team. Even with them being atop the NFC East or tied in terms of losses with the Commanders, Washington at 4-2, Philadelphia has played 1 less game at 3-2. Clearly, Nick Sirianni is feeling the heat from the fan base. He obviously felt it last year from ownership. And yesterday, I think, was a prime example of that. Even in victory, not a great victory, against the Cleveland Browns, a game in which this offense continued to struggle. I think it's averaged something like 18 points a game over the last 4 games. It is Pittsburgh Steelers-esque in its lack of firepower, and they have better talent than the Pittsburgh Steelers do. They should be able to do more offensively than they had over the last 4 games. But don't tell that to Nick Sirianni. No, no, no. Nick Sirianni's not having any of that, Sam Yarnell. No. He brought his kids up to the podium after the game yesterday, and then he had to explain why he was shouting down fans in his own stadium with his own team as this game was ending. He went after some of the Philly fans who were booing. Let's keep in mind something. This is the same fan base that booed Santa Claus. They booed Santa Claus. You think that you're immune to being booed, Nick Sirianni? This guy is so tetchy, so thin-skinned. It is, essentially Super Bowl or bust. Anything short of NFC Championship game is probably going to mean the end for this guy. And he's bringing it upon himself, not just because of his coaching decisions or his coaching style, but the attitude and the way in which he is carrying them. Listen to him yesterday explaining after the game the interaction with the fans on the sideline.
Yeah, we thrive off the crowd when they cheer for us. That's all I'll say. Like, when our crowd cheers for us, we thrive off them. We hear them when they boo. We don't necessarily like it. I don't think that's productive for anybody. But when they cheer for us and when we got them rolling, we love it.
Sam, what did you think?
Well, Jason, as someone from Jamestown, New York, it's not a surprise that Nick Sirianni doesn't know how to deal with large crowds. I've been to Jamestown, New York, and that doesn't quite strike me as the community to draw up 30,000 like the Link will every Sunday during the NFL season. At Mount Union College, where Nick Sirianni won 3 national championships, Division III national championships, but nevertheless, I bet you they didn't pull link-size crowds either. Listen, the reality of the situation is this. Nick Sirianni was hired way too early in terms of his coaching career. This is a guy who had only been around football coaching for 12 years before he was hired as an NFL head coach. I'm talking quality control assistant, offensive coordinator, all that stuff that you usually hear about guys being in the league for 20 to 25 years around before they get promoted to that head coaching role. Nick Sirianni had half of that. The Philadelphia Eagles knew that when they hired him. They knew that this was the risk they were taking. When they lost Shane Steichen, along with another coordinator back in 2020, they kind of had, or 2022, I'm sorry, they kind of had the idea, all right, Sirianni, this is your chance, prove it or don't. My problem with all of this was this. Nick Sirianni, you're in the crowd yelling at fans. You know that that is something that's going to get picked up. You know that you're going to be asked questions about that in the post-game press conference. So what does he respond by doing? Bringing his children as human shields to the media into the press conference? I didn't understand it at all. And quite frankly, that to me should be the straw that breaks the camel's back in terms of Nick Sirianni losing his job. I don't care if they won the game or not. You don't have the gall, the spine to go in front of the media and answer for your own actions or your questionable play calling throughout that game where you beat one of the worst teams in the NFL by what? One score? Less than two scores? Nick Sirianni has some serious soul searching to do if he ever wants to coach at a high level in the NFL again. Because right now, all he looks like is a glorified coordinator.
I don't think his ego will allow him to do that soul searching. It takes being humbled. And he can talk all he wants about, well, losses are humbling and this, that, and the other thing. There is nothing more humbling than being shown the door. Ask Robert Saleh right now. He's humbled. Trust me. I can promise you that. I did not plan to throw this into something to consider, but I think it's important that we do. Tua Tagovailoa is going to play football again this year. That is official. Look, we've talked about this a lot. We only got about a minute here, Sam. But he's made the decision to go forward with his career. I don't think any of us are surprised by that, by the way. If he was going to pull the trigger on retiring, he would have probably already done that. So it's not a surprise that he's decided he's going to continue with his career. Can he get back quick enough for the Dolphins, though, to try and salvage the season?
It'll be interesting, Jason. I don't know. He can't start practicing even for another 9 days. That's next Wednesday. Then he needs what? A still good 2 weeks to get back into the offense? That's week 10 you're looking at. I don't know.
Yeah. Might be too far gone for the Dolphins. And look, you just feel like you already felt like he was one hit away from it being the end of his career. I mean, where are we now on that? I don't know how you play with that anvil sort of hanging over your head. Tua's going to find out. Odds and ends are right around the corner. Monday Night Football, the WNBA, and more. All right, just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Monday. Don't forget, if you miss anything from SportsWrap, anything at all, we've got the SportsWrap with Jason Page podcast. It's available on all your favorite podcasting platforms: Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Odyssey, Amazon, anywhere. If you can find podcasts, you can find us. Or you can just DVR us, catch us on TV. All right, without any further delay, Sam Yarnell, time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, WNBA Finals. Game 1 goes to the Minnesota Lynx. Game 2 went to the Liberty. That best-of-5 WNBA Final is tied at 1 game apiece. Here's the big takeaway I got from those first 2 games. And I said this from the start. From a talent standpoint, the New York Liberty are definitely the more talented team. They have a larger depth of talent to draw from in this series. But if they don't play 40 minutes, if they don't literally, pay attention to the details for 40 minutes, the Lynx are going to pick them off because that team doesn't give up. I mean, that team was down, I think, 15 in the fourth quarter of game 1 and was able to rally to come from behind and steal that game in overtime when Breanna Stewart missed basically a layup at the end of overtime. That would have sent it to a second overtime. I told you guys Courtney Williams was a star, and you were going to find that out in this series. You have so far. And Minnesota did what it wanted to do. They got the thing back to Minnesota, tied at 1 game apiece, Sam.
I was just trying to look back on it while we were talking because before the series started on this show, I gave out one bet. It wasn't a side or a series winner. It was Breanna Stewart to lead the series in scoring over Nafisa Collier. They're tied through 2 games. Hilarious.
This was a as you could just see below. This was a 2-point game with 3.5 minutes left in game 2. So for people who didn't see the game, they see the final score, they're like, see, Liberty took control. This was a close game late.
Right. And I think that one of the most underrated plays in that game, speaking of Breanna Stewart scoring the basketball, I think it was Sabrina drove down the left side and under the basket in transition, and Stewie had this beautiful kick right to the corner for a wide open 3 that she knocked down to either give them the lead or extend their lead from 2 to 5. I couldn't remember which it was. Regardless, it was one of the more impressive plays, excuse me, from a basketball perspective that I've seen in this WNBA postseason. Crisp passing. But you're right, Jason. The Lynx showed you, like, if the Liberty don't step on them early, the Lynx will battle back in every single one of these games. And I think that gives them a fair chance to win the series.
Appropriate with Halloween right around the corner. They are that you can't shoot the killer enough. It's like Jason. It just keeps popping up. It's like Michael Myers. It just keeps popping up. See, you like what I did there? It's Halloween. It works perfect. Let's talk NFL. Monday Night Football. Boy, I wonder which way Sam is leaning on the Bills and the Jets from MetLife Stadium. I just said to you before we came back from the break, the Jets plus 1.5 is a suspicious line in this game to me.
Well, it's the new coach line, and frankly, I get it. It's a game that opened 3.5 and has moved all the way down to 1. I say 3.5 with the look ahead before the Saleh firing. And you know, I'm with the book, honestly. I think a coach being fired earns a team 2.5 points on the spread. I don't disagree. We see it time and time again, and it's what makes me nervous as a Bills fan in terms of this game. Every time a team gets a new coach, what do they want to do? They come out and they punch the other team that they're playing the next week right in the mouth. What is the one thing the Bills have struggled dealing with this year? It's getting punched in the mouth. So yeah, 100% nervous for this game. All of that said, I would still take my best bet in the game to be Aaron Rodgers to throw a pick for a multitude of reasons. I think Aaron Rodgers, we've talked about on the show seemingly every week, maybe bar one this season. Aaron Rodgers is not playing good football. He's not playing Aaron Rodgers football. He's not playing MVP level football. Quite frankly, he's playing middle of the pack NFL football right now. And you're getting minus 108 over on FanDuel for him to throw an interception tonight against a Bills defense that has defended the pass really well and struggled a lot against the run. Yeah, give me Aaron Rodgers to throw a pick as my best bet in this game. And if you want a couple of touchdown scores to sprinkle on, a couple of long shot guys here, Ray Davis plus 950 for an anytime touchdown and Ty Johnson plus 700 for an anytime touchdown. James Cook has been banged up all week. I think when the Bills get down around the goal line, they hand it off to the backup and third string backs.
I am a simple man. I'm simple. I'll take the over. 40.5. You can have all the player props, all of that stuff. I actually think this game goes over when all is said and done. And look, 40.5 is not a lot. So to me, that's a doable bet. And I've been killing it on totals. 4-0 on Sunday on the totals. 13-7, by the way, for the season for Paige versus the Prince, which I think is the same number as you now, Sam. I think we're both 13.
Yeah, we are tied now on Paige versus the Prince for the season. I'm with you though. I like the over in this game. Couple of ways to get there. Even if the Bills blow them out, they could score 42 alone.
All right, Sam. Give me some thoughts here before we say goodbye to the audience. Jets and Bills. Give me a final score.
Oof. 42-17 Bills.
Let that be the last word.